I'm Sean Aylmer, and this is a Fear and Greed extended interview. All the other good bits we couldn't fit into the daily podcast. If you're looking for the daily episode of Fear and Greed, check the podcast playlist. Otherwise, enjoy the interview. If the last fortnight has shown us anything, it's that the Australian travel industry is very much at the mercy of state governments, as well as the rollout of the COVID-19 vaccine. After a disastrous 12 months, the Easter long weekend should have been peak season for tourism in Australia. Instead, the short lockdown in Brisbane early last week, following a COVID outbreak, saw states closing their borders again and trips being cancelled. A two-way travel bubble with New Zealand announced yesterday offers some hope, but there's still uncertainty in the event of further outbreaks. Graham Skroo Turner is the co-founder and global managing director of the Flight Centre Travel Group. Graham, welcome to Fear and Greed.
Thank you, Sean.
What did you make of what's happened over the last couple of weeks, and particularly the lockdown in Brisbane late last week and the decision by other states around the country to restrict travel?
Look, it's quite disturbing, actually. I mean, I think you had Professor Peter calling on basically saying, why would you lock down for 3 days or a week? It just doesn't make any sense with this virus, the COVID-19 one, because it has a incubation period of 4 or 5 days and you're still infective for about another 5 or 6 days. So why you do for a week, there's just no logic in it, no science. There's no evidence that that sort of thing works anywhere in the world. Yet I think between Australia and New Zealand, we've done that 7 times now for no logic or scientific reason. So it is quite baffling, I must admit.
Do you get the feeling that some state premiers are a little trigger happy on this?
I can't believe it's them themselves. They must be getting some sort of advice. And I suspect it's in some of the public health officials who obviously have a lot of power and a lot of say in this, but most of them are not qualified to make decisions on this. They're public health officials, not epidemiologists even, or certainly not economists or the other sort of factors that need to be taken in to make these sort of decisions. It's incredibly expensive on the society, on the health industry, to do these fierce, sudden, pointless lockdowns.
Now, yesterday afternoon, it was announced a quarantine-free travel bubble with New Zealand. That's some good news. That'll come into effect from April 19. How popular will it be, do you think?
Look, I think it'll be quite popular. I mean, there's been a few sort of disclaimers and conditions, and I think they really do need, whether it's Australia, New Zealand or the States, basically to guarantee they're not going to panic when there's a few cases, because we are going to get cases. We know that there's going to be community transfer both in Australia and New Zealand over the next 6 months. That's the sort of thing that the premiers or prime ministers just can't afford to panic about. If we have that certainty, it'll be terrific for both countries. But obviously, particularly for New Zealand, Australia's a big market for New Zealand. They get a lot of their tourists from New Zealand. So it's very, very important for New Zealand. But having that certainty that people can go there with confidence and not have to possibly spend some sort of quarantine coming back is absolutely vital both ways. And that's the only thing that worries me and will worry travellers a little bit.
Well, I think Jacinda Ardern talked about under the guidance of flyer beware, whatever that means. That must put a little bit of a dampener on the announcement.
Does a bit. And look, it should be done by science. And if you look at those short lockdowns, they don't work. They obviously can't work. They might give a little bit of time for their testing and tracing to get into line, but the testing and tracing in both countries should be good enough by now that they don't need those ridiculous, unproven, unscientific lockdowns. And I don't know what her health officials, what their logic is, but it would be good to be open and honest. Why are they locking down when they have a few cases? And I think everyone deserves an answer to that so they can make their own judgment on whether there is a risk of travelling. I personally think this will disappear from the vocabulary from now on, particularly as vaccinations get rolled out better.
So how important is the rollout of the vaccines?
Look, it's psychologically, it's very important. Once the over 50s and all the old and sick people have been done, then there's no risk. It is, as I think the PM said, just at the worst for some of the young people, it could be a bad flu. So that's really important. And we've been fairly slow in Australia, and hopefully that's being ramped up now. But I believe that New Zealand has been going at snail's pace. And that's what they really need to be focused on, I think, really ramping up that. So it's not only Australia they can open to, but other countries as well, particularly countries considered low-risk green countries.
So we've talked a lot over the last 12 months about assistance packages from government, and obviously your industry, travel and tourism, has been among the absolute hardest hit. The JobKeeper ended, but the government did put out a $1.2 billion program to boost spending on domestic travel. I'm interested in your take on how much more is needed, or is that enough?
No, look, the government for certain tour operators, tourist industries and travel agents has announced a couple of packages, one 128 million some 6 weeks ago, and then another one is coming out in the next week or so. Unfortunately, we don't benefit from that at all, but the travel industry in general does. My main problem is that they will be supporting quite a few small companies. They're only supporting small companies that most of them, or a lot of them, probably won't make it through this. We can see now we've still got 6 to 9 months of pretty challenging conditions. And unless a lot more of the small players get a lot more help, I don't see more than half of them surviving, frankly, not just in travel agencies, but in key tourist venues and tour operators, because this is a long-term thing. Without JobKeeper, it's going to need a lot of help for quite a long time.
Graham, stay with me. We'll be back in a minute. My guest today is Graham Turner, Global Managing Director of the Flight Centre Travel Group. One thing that I've always been amazed with Flight Centre, and you've run it for a long time now, its demise was predicted when internet travel came online, yet Flight Centre of everyone seemed to do pretty much as well as any of the bricks and mortar agents did. Then this came along, which has been tougher.
Flight Centre was founded in 1982, having been in travel with Topdeck since 1973, and there's absolutely no doubt this is far and away the worst thing that's ever happened to us by a long, long way. The internet was a slight blip on the radar compared to this. It's a huge challenge for our company and our people and our leadership. What you survive, you end up being stronger for. I think we've got a cash runway that will last for at least a couple of years, even if things don't get back to some level of normality for quite a while. So we're okay, but it has been one of the toughest years in my business life by a long way.
You've reduced your cost base and your investors broadly have supported you. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, generally. I mean, we've had a capital raising and a convertible note, a significant convertible note, and we've had a lot of support. The convertible note of 300 or 400 million was oversubscribed about 4 times. So, there's plenty of confidence that we'll come out of this okay. We're in 23 countries where we have equity businesses. Going in, our sales are about 24 billion a year, and we've cut our costs by nearly 70%. And we've managed to keep them down so far. Things are starting to come back a little bit. March was our best month by a significant amount, even despite the Brisbane lockdown and the fact that the UK, there's very little travel in the UK or Canada. So, we're pretty confident, and we've had the support of our investors, as you say.
So what are you seeing in other geographies, the US and Canada, and then India, Hong Kong, then over to Europe, UK and Ireland and South Africa? How has the rest of your business fared?
It's remarkably similar for a lot of different reasons. China, for example, our domestic business is back to 100%, but there's not a lot of international business in South and East Asia. India, quite a lot of domestic in our market there, but again, not a lot of international. UAE, it's been making money now for about 4 or 5 months, so it is profitable. South Africa's been going quite well up until they're having another wave, but it's still going reasonably well. Their vaccination program is well behind and been interrupted, as you know. I think, as I said, UK, Europe, it's a bit of a basket case. The UK is going to come out pretty quickly, but now, if you see their death rate, we're pretty confident there. But there's no doubt the Europe is still a bit of a way away, as is Canada. US is going great guns. I mean, the leisure and business. Leisure is going gangbusters, particularly to Mexico and the Caribbean, whereas business is just starting to really pick up. So it's a little bit different all around the world. If you look at Australia and New Zealand, well, if we can keep the domestic borders open and the Trans-Tasman open, because our costs are down nearly 70%, something like 66%, we can get back towards that break-even figure with different markets opening up and particularly with the big countries having strong domestic travel, particularly in the business area.
Have you given a forecast for when break-even will be?
I'm not sure we've been too outspoken about that, but my feeling is that towards the end of this calendar year, we'll have months where we'll be either close to or just over break-even. So towards Christmas, early next year, that's generally what we think. But the proviso is so many things can change to make it worse, whereas probably not that many things can change to make it dramatically better. Vaccinations and international travel will be the big thing for us. We know we can do pretty well with the big domestic markets going well and being open, but it's the international that's really, it coming back in a big way, which will look like, okay, Trans-Tasman's a start, but it looks like international travel generally will start coming back in July and be reasonably well back by about December. Very country to country, obviously.
Will travel ever return to normal?
Good question. I mean, we're not predicting the leisure market to be back to about the normal pre-COVID levels until about the financial year ending June 24. And probably we don't think corporate will be back. It'll probably be back about 80 to 85% then. We don't really know, but that's our estimates. So corporate probably won't get back to that for some time, but probably by June 24, we believe our sales will be pretty much back to pre-COVID levels, if not a bit better in leisure. And that'll mean we'll have to win a bit more market share in corporate, which we feel we will, and certainly maintain or win some in leisure as well. Unfortunately, there'll be so many businesses that will be struggling through this period, and a lot of the smaller ones and medium-sized, depending on what happens over the next 6 months, just probably won't survive.
Graham, thanks for talking to Fair and Great.
Thank you, Sean.
That was Graham Turner, Global Managing Director of the Flight Centre Travel Group.